They targeted a single mom and an autistic man because they thought silence meant weakness, because they believed no one would question the story they were about to write. Maya's apartment in Columbus, Ohio, woke up the way it always did, not with peace, but with careful silence. The heater clicked like it was thinking about giving up, and the window by the couch bed wore a patchwork of taped cardboard that turned morning light into a dull, bruised glow. She moved barefoot across the thin carpet, stepping around toys that had no business being on the floor this early. Her jaw ached from clenching in her sleep. Even before her eyes fully opened, her mind was already counting what she could not afford. Leo slept curled on his side, one small hand tucked under his cheek like he was holding his own face together. His hair stuck up in soft points, and for a second Maya felt something close to relief, the kind that comes when the world hasn't started swinging yet. She brushed a fingertip along his forehead without touching skin, hovering like a promise. She told herself she would make him pancakes on Sunday, even if it meant skipping dinner once. A mother learns to trade her future in quiet little pieces. She just never knows who is watching the transaction. The hallway outside their door smelled like old cooking oil and lemon cleaner that never quite won. Somewhere down the corridor, a TV blared laughter too loud for the hour, the kind of laugh that sounded like someone trying to prove they were fine. Maya slid the deadbolt back slowly, listening for footsteps, for voices, for any sign that today would already be heavy. When she opened the door, she found the usual dim light, the peeling paint, and across the hall, Ethan's door, closed, perfectly still. His stillness always felt different than everyone else's, like intention. Ethan was hard for most people to understand, and Maya had learned that hard often made people mean. He kept to himself, timed his laundry to avoid crowds, and wore headphones even when there was no sound coming from them. Sometimes he looked past people, not because he thought he was better, but because his eyes seemed to be trying to land on something steady inside a moving world. Once Maya saw him flinch when the landlord's keys jingled too close behind him. It wasn't drama. It was his body remembering what his mouth never explained. Maya didn't know Ethan's full story, only fragments she collected the way tired people collect survival tips. He worked from home, if he worked at all. He always carried a small notebook, pages filled with neat lines like a mind trying to keep order. He nodded at Maya sometimes, quick and careful, as if the gesture cost him. Most neighbors called him strange with the lazy confidence of people who had never been punished for being different. Maya hated how easily cruelty found its way into casual conversation, like a habit nobody bothered to break. She had her own label in the building, though no one said it to her face with honesty. Single mom, late on rent. That woman who always looks tired. The kind of person people treat like a warning sign instead of a human being. Maya felt it when she walked past the mailboxes and the talk got quieter, when someone's eyes dropped to Leo's shoes like they were measuring him. Shame is a strange thing. It doesn't just sit in the mind. It moves into the shoulders, the throat, the stomach, making each breath feel slightly borrowed. Leo's backpack was missing a zipper pull, and Maya tied it shut with a piece of string, smiling like it was no big deal. She told him he looked like an explorer. Leo believed her because he still trusted language. He still thought words were meant to help. He grabbed her hand on the way down the stairs and Maya let him, even though she knew he was getting older, even though she knew one day he might stop. She tried to hold on to the warmth of his palm, like it could keep the rest of the world out. At the bottom landing, the landlord's office door was cracked open. Maya saw his silhouette move behind frosted glass, and her stomach tightened on instinct. She wasn't late yet, not technically. But she had been late before, and once a person becomes late, they stay late in other people's minds forever. She tugged Leo gently forward, eyes on the exit, pretending she didn't feel judged. As they passed, the landlord's door clicked a little wider, just enough for her to hear her name spoken softly, like it belonged to someone else. Outside, the morning air bit at her cheeks, and the parking lot shimmered with last night's ice. Maya balanced a cheap coffee in one hand, and Leo's lunch bag in the other, already thinking about her shift and the daycare fee. and the call she needed to make about health insurance she couldn't keep. She looked up at the building, at the rows of windows, and felt that familiar sensation, like being on display without knowing what she was being watched for. Her mind searched for reasons the way it always did, because uncertainty is a predator that never stops circling. When they returned later, Maya noticed something small that didn't fit. A new flyer taped near the entrance, printed on bright paper, promising a community safety discussion for residents. The words sounded friendly, but her skin didn't believe them. Safety for whom? Safety from what? Leo tugged her sleeve and pointed up the stairs, whispering that Ethan was sitting on the landing halfway up, even though he never sat there. Maya followed Leo's gaze, and her breath caught when she saw Ethan holding his notebook open, staring at the hallway like he was waiting for something to happen. Ethan didn't look at them right away. His shoulders were tight, his jaw set in a way Maya hadn't seen before, and his fingers pressed so hard into the notebook's spine that his knuckles blanched. It made Maya's pulse speed up, not from fear of him, but from the sudden sense that he had noticed something she hadn't. When Ethan finally lifted his eyes, they didn't land on Maya's face first. They flicked to her door, then to the flyer, then back to her, as if he wanted to speak but couldn't find the right bridge. His lips parted, and he started, "They," but the word fell apart in the air. Maya stood there with Leo beside her, feeling the hallway narrow, feeling the building breathe around them. She wanted to ask Ethan what he meant, but a door down the corridor shut too loudly, and Ethan flinched like a switch had been thrown inside him. He rose too fast, retreated toward his apartment, then paused, as if forcing himself to be braver than his body wanted. His voice came out thin but steady, and he said, "Someone is paying attention." He stopped again, eyes darting, like he was choosing what not to say, and Maya realized he wasn't warning her about a feeling. He was warning her about a pattern he had already started tracking. Maya unlocked her door with shaking fingers, trying to act normal so Leo wouldn't absorb her fear like a sponge. She got him inside, set his lunch bag on the counter, and looked back out into the hallway. Ethan's door was shut now. The flyer still hung there, bright and cheerful, lying with a smile. Maya's mind replayed Ethan's broken sentence, the way his eyes had moved like he was scanning for threats nobody else could see. She told herself she was overthinking. She told herself she was tired. But deep down, she felt something else, something colder. The sense that the worst kind of trouble never announces itself. It blends in. It waits. And if Ethan had started noticing it first, what had he seen that made him finally try to speak? If you had to guess, what do you think they were paying attention to, and why would it involve Maya and Leo? Put your theory here below in the comments. Maya tried to keep the rest of the evening normal, because normal was the thin blanket she pulled over fear. She warmed a can of soup, added extra water to make it feel like more, and listened to Leo talk about a classmate who had brought a shiny lunchbox with a cartoon astronaut on it. Leo didn't sound jealous, not exactly. He sounded confused, like he couldn't understand why some kids had weightless lives and others carried bricks. Maya nodded, smiled at the right moments, and watched his face for any sign that the day had bruised him. When he laughed, she felt relief so sharp it almost hurt. After dinner, Leo lined up his toy cars in a perfect row along the edge of the couch bed, then adjusted them again until the spacing looked right. He did it when he was anxious, the way Maya rubbed her thumb against her palm until it went numb. She pretended not to notice, because pointing it out would make him feel seen in the wrong way, like a spotlight. She helped him with his pajamas, kissed the top of his head, and whispered that tomorrow would be easier, even though she didn't know if that was true. Some lies are kindness, some lies are desperation. Once Leo fell asleep, Maya opened her phone and scrolled through the same numbers she always avoided. Late notices, reminders, a voicemail from the daycare that made her stomach tighten before she even pressed play. She didn't listen, not yet. Instead, she stared at a message thread from her sister that had gone quiet months ago, a silent proof that pride and exhaustion can turn into distance. Maya told herself she didn't need help. Then she remembered Ethan's face on the stairwell, the way his mouth had tried to form a warning, and her mind began filling the gaps with worst-case shapes. She stepped into the hallway with a trash bag to buy herself an excuse to breathe different air. The corridor was quieter now, but not peaceful. Quiet like a room after an argument. As she reached the chute, she noticed the community flyer again, its bright paper too cheerful for the building's tired walls. Someone had added handwriting at the bottom in black marker, small but deliberate. Attendance matters. Maya's throat tightened. It wasn't a threat, exactly. It was pressure dressed up as neighborliness, and her body recognized it the way it recognized the smell of smoke before flames. On her way back, she paused outside Ethan's door. She had never knocked before, not because she didn't care, but because she didn't know what kindness looked like for someone like him. For a second, she pictured him startled, overwhelmed, retreating inward, and she almost walked away. Then she remembered his eyes flicking to her door like he was worried about something happening to her, not from her. Maya lifted her hand and knocked once, soft, then lowered it quickly as if she'd done something wrong. A long silence. Maya started to turn, embarrassed, when the door opened a narrow crack. Ethan's face appeared in the slice of light, pale and tense, his eyes not meeting hers at first. He stared at her shoulder, her hair, anywhere but her gaze, like eye contact was a heat he couldn't hold for long. Maya spoke gently, keeping her voice low. She said she saw the flyer. She said she didn't understand what it was. Ethan swallowed, his throat moving like he was forcing words through something tight. "It's not for safety," he said, then went still as if he'd revealed too much. Maya asked what he meant, and Ethan's eyes finally lifted, quick and flickering. His apartment behind him looked orderly in a way that made her chest ache. Shoes aligned, a small shelf with papers stacked precisely, the air dim and clean. On the wall near the entrance, Leo's little drawings were lined up in a careful row, as if they were framed treasures, even without frames. Maya felt a surprising burn behind her eyes. Ethan noticed her looking and stiffened, like he feared she would think it was strange. But there was nothing strange about it. It was tenderness with rules, affection expressed through structure. Ethan opened the door a little wider, then stopped, as if he'd reached the edge of what he could tolerate. He held his notebook against his chest like armor. "They talk," he said, voice flat but strained, "when they think no one hears." Maya waited, letting the silence do the work, because she'd learned that rushing people made them disappear. Ethan continued, slower. He said names, 2 neighbors Maya recognized, and the landlord. He said meeting again and complaints, and something about documentation that made Maya's stomach drop. She asked if they were talking about rent. Ethan hesitated. Then he shook his head once, small and certain. Not just rent. Maya felt her pulse in her ears. She tried to keep her expression calm, because panic would not help Ethan speak. She asked what else it could be, and Ethan's jaw tightened as if the answer tasted wrong. "Your son," he said, and the words landed like a stone thrown through glass. Maya's mind flashed through every private moment that could be twisted into a story. Leo crying in the hallway, Leo's shoes worn thin, Maya's exhaustion. She imagined someone taking pictures, collecting details, turning her life into evidence. Her skin went cold, and for a second she couldn't breathe properly, as if the building had stolen the air. Ethan watched her carefully, not with curiosity, but with worry. He seemed to sense her spiraling and tried to anchor the moment with something concrete. He tapped the notebook lightly. "Dates," he said. "Times. Words." His voice shook on the last one, like repeating the cruelty out loud was dangerous. Maya asked why he was writing it down, and Ethan's eyes flicked away again. Shame crossed his face, fast and raw. "Because people say I imagine things," he whispered. "But I don't." The sentence was small, but it carried years inside it. Years of being doubted, dismissed, laughed at for noticing too much. Maya stood in the hallway, feeling the moral weight of an impossible choice. If she believed Ethan, she had to accept that her safety was already compromised. If she didn't, she was calling him a liar in the same way others always had, and she couldn't bear that kind of injustice. Her brain reached for certainty, for proof, because the human mind hates loose ends more than it hates pain. She asked if he had heard them say what they wanted. Ethan hesitated so long Maya feared he'd shut down. Then he spoke, each word measured. They want to make it look responsible. He paused. Like they're helping. Maya's throat tightened. Helping was the word people used right before they took things away. She thought of agencies, paperwork, interviews, the kind of smiling scrutiny that can destroy a family without ever raising a voice. She thought of how quickly a tired mother becomes a story others tell about her. She wanted to yell, to march downstairs, to confront the landlord, but she knew that kind of reaction would make her look exactly like the version of herself they wanted to paint. She forced herself to breathe slowly, in and out, like she could calm the storm by refusing to feed it. Ethan shifted his weight, restless, like staying in the doorway too long was burning him. Maya asked one more question, softly, careful not to demand. She asked how he knew it wasn't just gossip. Ethan's eyes tightened, and he reached into the notebook, flipping to a page marked with a folded corner. He didn't show it to her yet. He just held the page between two fingers, like it was dangerous to touch. "Because I heard a plan," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "And it starts soon." He swallowed hard, and the hallway seemed to lean closer, listening. "Tomorrow," he added, and then he stopped, as if the rest of the sentence was too sharp to release. Morning arrived like a bill slid under the door. Maya woke before her alarm, eyes open in the dark, already listening. The building had its own language, pipes ticking, distant footsteps, a cough behind a wall, and today every sound felt like it carried meaning. She lay still, staring at the ceiling stain shaped like a continent, telling herself not to catastrophize. But her body didn't care about logic. It remembered the word Ethan had used. Tomorrow. Now it was tomorrow, and she could feel it in her throat. She made breakfast with the kind of calm that took effort. Leo sat cross-legged on the couch bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes, and Maya kept her voice light as she poured cereal into a chipped bowl. She asked about school, about his spelling test, about the drawing he'd promised his teacher. Leo nodded, distracted, and she noticed his fingers tapping the spoon in a steady rhythm. It was his way of stitching the world together. Maya wanted to be that steady for him, but her mind kept reaching for the notebook Ethan held like proof of gravity. When Leo went to the bathroom, Maya checked her phone again. No new messages, but that didn't soothe her. Silence can be a weapon when you don't know what's coming. She opened the daycare app and saw a reminder about a form she still hadn't filled out. A form that asked questions with innocent wording and sharp consequences. Emergency contacts. Household stability. Any changes at home. Maya's thumb hovered over the screen, and she imagined someone else answering for her. Someone with cleaner nails and softer exhaustion. She walked Leo to the bus stop in air that tasted like metal. The sky was pale, flat, and the sun looked like it had to push through something heavy just to exist. Other parents stood in small clusters, chatting, laughing, performing ease. Maya didn't join them. She felt like if she opened her mouth, fear might spill out and stain everything. Leo climbed onto the bus, turned, and waved with a grin that made her heart ache. She waved back, too long, until the bus swallowed him and the door folded shut. On her way back, she saw Ethan near the mailboxes. He stood slightly apart, shoulders tight, eyes locked on the bulletin board as if it had insulted him. The community flyer was still there, but now it had been moved to the center, straightened like it was important. Under it, someone had pinned a second page. Resident Concerns Intake. It looked official, with blank lines and checkboxes. Maya felt her pulse jump. This wasn't a casual meeting anymore. It was paperwork. It was permanence. Ethan didn't look at her, but his fingers flexed at his side like he was holding himself back. Maya forced herself to speak first, quietly. She asked if he slept. Ethan shook his head once, then gave a tiny nod, as if honesty and politeness were wrestling inside him. He pointed toward the new form without touching it. "That," he said. He swallowed. "They want people to sign." Maya stepped closer and read the printed words, the sterile phrases that could be stretched into accusations. Unsafe conditions. Unusual behavior. Child welfare. Her vision blurred for a second, and she blinked hard until the letters stopped moving. She asked who made it. Ethan's eyes moved toward the stairwell, then to the landlord's office door, then back to the form. He didn't say the landlord's name, but he didn't have to. Maya heard the implication like a loud noise. The worst kind of harm is the kind that hides behind procedure, because it looks clean. It looks responsible. Maya's skin crawled with the thought of strangers collecting opinions about her motherhood the way they collected coupons. Ethan's notebook was tucked under his arm. Maya noticed the corners were bent from being opened too many times, like he kept returning to the same page for reassurance. She asked what he heard exactly, and she saw his jaw tighten. Asking for details was like asking him to relive it, and she hated herself for needing it. But fear demands evidence. Ethan breathed in, slow and controlled, then said, "They practiced." Maya frowned. Ethan continued, voice careful. What to say? How to sound concerned. He paused as if choosing a safer word. Convincing. Maya felt a bitter laugh rise in her chest and forced it down. She pictured a circle of neighbors rehearsing kindness the way people rehearse lies, smoothing their faces, adjusting their voices, rehearsing the right amount of pity. She imagined them saying her name with sympathy, while sharpening the blade underneath it. Her mind flashed to a memory of her own mother being judged in a grocery store line, the way strangers looked at a crying child like it was proof of failure. Maya had promised herself she'd never be that exposed. But promises don't stop systems. She asked Ethan why he was involved at all, why they would mention him. Ethan's eyes flicked away, and his shoulders rose slightly, as if bracing for impact. "Because I'm easy," he said, and the word sounded like it hurt to say. Maya's mouth opened, but no argument came fast enough to undo years of being told you were simple, breakable, inconvenient. Ethan's fingers tightened around the notebook. "They want someone neutral to confirm things," he added, as if quoting a voice he despised. "They think I'll agree." Maya's chest tightened with anger that felt clean and hot. She didn't want revenge. She wanted dignity. She wanted her child to grow up in a world where people didn't use someone's differences as a tool. She looked at Ethan, his stiff posture, his guarded gaze, and she understood something new. His quiet wasn't weakness. It was restraint, built from surviving too much noise. The thought of them trying to drag him into their story made her stomach turn, like watching someone step toward a trap. They stood there as a door opened down the hall. A neighbor Maya recognized, smiling too wide, walked past them with a bright, "Good morning," the kind that asked for compliance. Maya answered politely. Ethan didn't speak, but he nodded once, a small, mechanical motion. The neighbor's eyes lingered on Ethan a fraction too long, then slid to Maya, then to the papers on the board, as if checking whether the message landed. When the neighbor walked away, Maya felt the shift in the air, the faint satisfaction that someone had been seen and measured. Maya whispered that she needed to protect Leo. Ethan nodded again, but his eyes sharpened, like that sentence activated something in him. He said, "Do not go alone." Maya frowned, confused. Ethan's voice lowered further, almost swallowed by the hum of the building. "If they ask questions," he said, "they will write your answers like weapons." Maya wanted to argue that she could handle herself, but she knew he was right. Words can be twisted, tone can be labeled, tears can be framed as instability. Even calm can be called detached. There was no safe performance. Maya looked back at the intake form, at the blank lines waiting to be filled with judgment. She imagined the landlord collecting them like a stack of clean reasons. Her mind searched for allies and found almost none. Then she remembered something she hadn't told Ethan yet. The email from her job about attendance concerns. The subtle shift that felt like someone's hand on the scale. She hadn't wanted to connect the dots because connecting them meant the problem was real. She turned to Ethan and started to speak, but her voice caught when she saw what he was staring at. Ethan wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the floor near the baseboard, where something small lay half hidden in shadow. A thin slip of paper, like it had been dropped and forgotten. Ethan crouched carefully, picked it up with 2 fingers, and held it out without unfolding it, as if the paper itself might bite. Maya took it, heart beating too fast, and opened it slowly. It was a photocopy of a form she recognized from daycare, one she hadn't filled out yet, except this one already had her name on it, spelled correctly, and a line was circled in red ink. Home visit recommended. Maya held the photocopy like it could burn her, but it was only paper, thin, cold, and too calm for the panic it caused. The circled words seemed to throb as her eyes reread them. Home visit recommended. The phrase sounded polite, like a suggestion, yet her nervous system treated it like a siren. She pictured a stranger walking through her apartment, noticing the cardboard on the window, the couch bed, the way the fridge sometimes sounded empty, even when she tried her best. It wasn't just fear of judgment. It was fear of someone turning her love into a liability. Ethan watched her face with a careful intensity, as if he was reading weather patterns. Maya realized he didn't need her to explain. He already understood what this meant to someone like her. She asked where he found it, and he pointed toward the stairwell without looking, like the direction itself was dangerous. "It was not there yesterday," he said. His voice stayed flat, but his fingers kept flexing, betraying the strain. Maya's mind tried to build a rational explanation, but the paper felt placed, not lost, like bait, like proof someone could claim they just found. She folded the photocopy and slid it into her pocket with shaking hands. The motion felt like hiding contraband. She asked Ethan if he thought someone was trying to frame her, and the word frame sounded dramatic out loud, like a movie. But nothing about this felt dramatic. It felt administrative, which was worse. Ethan hesitated, then nodded once. "They want a story," he said. "A clean one." Maya swallowed. A clean story leaves no room for context, no room for exhaustion, no room for the truth that many good mothers are simply outnumbered. Maya went inside and locked the door, then locked it again, even though it was already locked. She leaned her forehead against the wood and breathed through the nausea. Her brain tried to solve it the way it solved everything. If she could identify the threat, she could control it. She thought of the landlord's forced smile, the neighbor's too bright greeting, the way the flyer had been centered like a spotlight. She thought of Ethan counting patterns while everyone else dismissed him as odd. She hated that it took danger for people to call him useful. Her phone buzzed, and the sound snapped her upright. A new email from her job. Subject line: schedule adjustment. Her fingers hovered before she opened it, as if delaying could change what was inside. The message was short, friendly, and sharp. They had reduced her hours temporarily, citing recent attendance instability and customer experience consistency. Maya's throat tightened. She hadn't been absent. She had swapped one shift once when Leo had a fever. It had been approved. She stared at the screen, and her mind made a terrible leap. Someone had been speaking about her beyond the building. She tried calling her manager, but it went to voicemail. She left a message that sounded too controlled. then deleted it in her head, then regretted every word she'd chosen. When you know you're being evaluated, you start hearing your own voice as evidence. Maya set the phone down and pressed her palms into her eyes until she saw stars. She wanted to cry, but crying felt like giving them the version of her they expected. She forced herself to stand, to wash a dish that wasn't dirty, to move so she wouldn't collapse. A knock came at the door, not hard, not soft, just confident. Maya froze, every muscle tightening at once, and for a second she didn't breathe. Another knock, the same rhythm, as if the person knew she was there and didn't care if she was afraid. Maya walked to the peephole and looked out. The landlord stood in the hall with a folder tucked under his arm, wearing a smile that looked practiced. Behind him, half hidden, was a woman Maya recognized from downstairs, holding a clipboard like it belonged to her. The hallway suddenly felt like a courtroom. Maya opened the door only a few inches, chains still latched. The landlord greeted her by name, warm and casual, as if they were friends. He said there had been some concerns, and he wanted to check in to make sure she felt supported. Supported. The word made Maya's stomach turn. She asked what concerns, and his smile didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. He mentioned noise complaints, late payments, general safety, all delivered in the tone of someone reading a menu. The woman beside him nodded sympathetically, but her pen hovered, ready to capture any slip. Maya kept her voice steady and asked who filed complaints. The landlord's eyebrows lifted in a fake gesture of surprise, as if Maya was being unreasonable to want names. "It's confidential," he said gently, like he was protecting her. Maya felt the trap. If she sounded defensive, she would look guilty. If she sounded calm, she could be labeled detached. She chose simple words, careful words, the kind that could not be twisted easily. She said she was doing her best. She said her son was safe. She said she would appreciate any concerns being brought directly to her. The landlord nodded like he admired her composure. Then he slid the folder forward, angled so she could see the top page through the crack. "Just routine," he said. "A community wellness check-in. Nothing to worry about." Maya's eyes caught a phrase near the middle, and her heart lurched. "Resident suitability review." It sounded like she was applying to be allowed to exist. The woman with the clipboard leaned slightly closer, and Maya noticed the smallest thing. Her badge wasn't from any agency Maya recognized. It was a logo Maya had seen on the building's management emails. Maya asked if this was from the city or from the property company. The landlord's smile faltered for half a second, then recovered. He said it was a partnership meant to maintain standards. Standards. Maya thought of the cardboard on her window again, the way she'd taped it up to keep Leo warm. She imagined someone calling it neglect instead of necessity. She felt anger rise, but she pressed it down, because anger could be used against her. The landlord asked if he could step inside to document that everything was fine. Maya's pulse hammered. Letting him in felt like surrender. Refusing felt like confirmation that she had something to hide. The moral dilemma tightened around her. Cooperate and risk being misread, or resist and risk being labeled unstable. She glanced over the landlord's shoulder and saw Ethan's door across the hall, closed and silent. She wondered if Ethan was listening, if he was writing this down, if his notebook was the only thing standing between her and a manufactured story. Maya stalled, saying Leo was resting and she didn't want to disturb him. The landlord tilted his head, patience wearing thin beneath politeness. He said he understood, then added too smoothly that it was better to do this the easy way. The words landed like a threat hidden inside kindness. Maya felt her mouth go dry. She wanted to ask what the hard way would look like, but she didn't. She simply repeated that now wasn't a good time. The woman with the clipboard scribbled something, and Maya couldn't see what. The landlord's eyes flicked toward the chain latch, then back to Maya's face, and his smile grew smaller. "All right," he said, still gentle. "We'll reschedule. Soon." He tapped the folder lightly, as if it were harmless. Then he lowered his voice, just enough to make the next sentence feel private. "You know," he said, "people worry when they don't understand a situation. It helps when someone responsible vouches for you." His gaze drifted, almost casually, toward Ethan's door. Maya's stomach dropped. He wasn't just checking in. He was recruiting. And in that moment, Maya understood exactly why Ethan had looked terrified on the stairwell. As the landlord turned to leave, Maya saw something slip from the folder, just the corner of a page peeking out. For a split second, she caught a printed heading that didn't belong in any wellness check. Media prepared statement. The landlord tucked it back quickly, but it was too late. Maya's blood went cold. This wasn't only about paperwork or rent. Someone was preparing to tell a story about her in public, and they had already written the script. Maya closed the door and slid to the floor, not because she wanted to fall apart, but because her legs stopped cooperating. Her mind replayed the landlord's tone, the careful words that could be quoted later with false innocence. Media prepared statement. The phrase echoed like a warning bell. She pictured a local news segment with her building in the background, her face blurred, her life summarized into a headline that fit between commercials. People loved a story about a struggling mother when it ended neatly. People loved it even more when it ended with blame. She forced herself up before Leo could see her on the floor. He was in the bedroom area, humming softly as he colored, the sound small and steady. Maya watched him for a second and felt the strangest mix of gratitude and grief. Gratitude that he still felt safe enough to hum. Grief that his safety could be negotiated by strangers. She sat beside him and asked about his drawing, keeping her voice warm. Leo showed her a picture of a house with a big sun and 3 stick figures holding hands. "This one is you," he said, tapping the tallest figure. "This one is me." Then he paused, looking serious, and pointed to the third. "This one is Ethan." Maya's throat tightened. She asked why Ethan. Leo shrugged like it was obvious. "He's quiet," he said. "Quiet people hear things." The line landed too perfectly, like a child accidentally stating a truth adults ignore. Maya smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She told Leo it was a nice drawing, then turned her head slightly so he wouldn't see the fear rising again. Her brain kept scanning the past week, searching for when this started. Was it the late rent? Was it the cardboard? Was it Ethan being different? Or was it something else, something about the building itself? That afternoon, Maya waited until Leo was absorbed in a cartoon and stepped into the hallway. She wanted to speak to Ethan again, but she didn't want to overwhelm him. She approached his door the way you approach a wounded animal, slow, predictable, respectful. She knocked once, then waited, hands clasped to keep from fidgeting. The silence stretched long enough to make her doubt herself. Then the door opened a few inches, chain still latched on his side this time, as if he needed boundaries to stay present. Ethan's eyes were tired, ringed with a sleepless red, but alert in a way that made Maya think he had been thinking all night. Maya didn't waste time with small talk. She told him the landlord had come with paperwork. She told him she saw the words media prepared statement. Ethan's face changed in a quick, subtle way, like someone had turned the volume up inside him. He didn't look surprised. He looked confirmed. He swallowed, then said, "They want leverage." The word sounded clinical, but his hands trembled slightly, betraying how much it cost him to say it out loud. Maya asked what she should do. The question felt humiliating, like admitting she had no control over her own life. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He stared at a spot on the wall beside her, breathing carefully, as if he was arranging thoughts into a path he could walk without falling. "Do not explain too much," he said finally. "They collect explanations." Maya frowned. Ethan continued, voice low. When someone is anxious, they talk. They fill gaps. Then other people fill the gaps worse. He paused, searching for the right word. They weaponize it. Maya felt a bitter recognition. She had done it before, over-explained to teachers, to managers, to strangers who didn't deserve her vulnerability. She had offered her private life as a sacrifice to be believed, and it never worked. It only taught people where she bled. She asked Ethan what he had written down, and his eyes flicked to the notebook on his table, visible through the crack. He hesitated, then opened the door a little wider, enough for Maya to see inside without stepping in. The apartment looked like a mine trying to create safety. Clean lines, soft light, no clutter. On the small table near the entrance, the notebook lay open. Maya couldn't read it yet, but she saw the structure. Dates aligned, short phrases, arrows, little boxes around names. It wasn't gossip. It was a map. Ethan's voice tightened. "They meet in the laundry room," he said. "When it's empty." He paused. "They think no one stays long enough to notice." Maya imagined neighbors pretending to fold towels while rehearsing concern. She imagined them using the word child like a tool. Her stomach churned. Ethan added, almost reluctantly, "They say you are unstable, and I am unreliable." Maya's chest tightened with anger that felt sharp and clean. She wanted to tell Ethan he wasn't unreliable, but she knew reassurance alone wouldn't undo a lifetime of being labeled. Instead, she asked what they wanted from him. Ethan's eyes dropped. His voice came out thinner. "They want me to sign," he said, "to confirm that you yelled, that the child cries, that the home is bad." He stopped, jaw clenched, then added with quiet disgust, "They will call it neutral because I am autistic, like my words are a tool they can borrow." Maya felt a wave of shame that wasn't hers, but still landed in her body. Shame for how often society treated autistic people like props in other people's narratives, useful only when convenient. She asked if he would sign. Ethan's face tightened, as if the question itself was painful. He shook his head once, firm. Then he looked at her, and for the first time his gaze held hers, a beat longer than usual. "No," he said, "but they will try harder, they will pressure, they will be nice." The last word sounded like poison. Maya nodded slowly, absorbing it. She realized something unsettling. The landlord's kindness wasn't random. It was strategy. People comply more when they feel guilty, and guilt sticks easily to someone already exhausted. Maya asked Ethan if he would come with her to the meeting, if there was one. The request felt risky. She didn't want to drag him into sensory overload, into confrontation. Ethan hesitated. His breathing changed slightly, quicker. Then he said, "If you go alone, they decide what you are." He paused. "If I go, I can listen." Maya's heart thudded. She didn't know if listening would be enough. She didn't know if facts would matter against a polished story. But she knew this. Ethan's attention was different than hers. Her mind, under stress, wanted to flee or fight. His mind wanted patterns, specifics, truth that could be held. She felt a fragile hope, the kind that arrives when you realize you might not be alone in the room where your life gets judged. She asked what he needed to be able to go. Ethan's gaze drifted to the floor, then back up. "A plan," he said. "A simple one." That evening, Maya tucked Leo into bed and sat at the kitchen table with her phone and a notepad, trying to build her own map. She wrote down dates of rent payments, daycare receipts, work schedules. The act of writing steadied her, as if her brain calmed when her fear became ink. Still, doubts kept sneaking in. What if the building management already decided? What if the meeting was just theater? What if Ethan got overwhelmed and shut down, and they used that against both of them? Maya stared at the wall and felt the weight of being one misunderstanding away from disaster. Her phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Heard there's a meeting about you." If you're smart, you'll cooperate. Maya's fingers went cold. She stared at the message until the letters seemed unreal. The fear wasn't loud. It was precise, aimed at compliance. She wanted to respond, to ask who it was, to demand they stop. But Ethan's words echoed. They collect explanations. Maya deleted the text, but the deletion didn't erase the fact that someone had her number, and someone felt bold enough to warn her. Across the hall, Ethan's footsteps moved softly, pacing in a measured loop, as if his body was trying to regulate something too big. Maya imagined him in his apartment, notebook open, replaying words like evidence. She imagined the pressure building against him, people trying to corner him into agreement. Then she remembered the way the landlord's eyes had drifted toward Ethan's door when he mentioned someone responsible vouching. Ethan wasn't an afterthought. He was part of their design. Maya realized the next move wouldn't be another friendly knock. Late that night, when the building settled into shallow quiet, Maya heard paper sliding under her door. She froze, heart hammering, then stood slowly and approached it. A single envelope lay on the floor, no stamp, no name, just her apartment number written neatly, almost politely. Maya opened it with trembling fingers and pulled out a printed notice with the property company's logo at the top. The first line made her vision blur. Notice of lease review hearing. And beneath it, a line that made her stomach drop even further. Witness statement requested. Ethan R. Maya read the notice again and again, as if repetition could soften it. Witness statement requested. Ethan R. They had put his name into their machinery like a gear, assuming it would turn the way they wanted. Her mind leapt to Leo, asleep with his cheek pressed into a pillow that had gone flat from too many washes, and she felt a fierce protectiveness rise like heat. But under the heat was something colder, helplessness. The system didn't need to be loud to be violent. It only needed to be official. She crossed the hall before she could talk herself out of it. The carpet felt rough under her bare feet, and the building's quiet sounded staged, like everyone was pretending to sleep while listening. She knocked on Ethan's door, then waited, holding the notice behind her back as if it were shameful. When the door opened, Ethan looked like he hadn't been resting at all. His eyes were alert, but distant, the way someone looks when they've been looping through the same thought for hours. He saw her expression and stiffened immediately, as if preparing for impact. Maya held out the notice. Ethan took it, reading with quick, precise movements, his lips tightening as he reached the line with his name. He didn't curse or slam the door. He simply went very still. That stillness scared Maya more than anger would have. His breathing became deliberate, in through the nose, out through the mouth, like he was trying to keep his body from betraying him. They did it, he said softly. Not surprise. Confirmation. Maya asked what he meant, and he didn't answer right away. He stared at the paper as if it had weight. Ethan stepped back and opened the door wider, an invitation that felt significant because he rarely invited anyone into his space. Maya hesitated, then entered carefully, aware of how loud her presence might feel. His apartment smelled faintly of unscented soap and paper. Everything had a place. Shoes aligned, a mug rinsed and drying, curtains drawn to a measured gap. The order wasn't cold. It was protective. It made Maya think of someone building a small shelter inside a world that kept trying to touch him without permission. He guided her toward the small table where the notebook sat. He didn't hand it to her. Instead, he flipped it open himself, keeping control, and pointed to a page filled with short lines. Maya saw dates, times, and fragments of quotes. She saw the landlord's name written more than once. She saw the words, meeting, image, standards, and written in smaller letters, single mom makes good example. Maya's stomach turned. Example. Like her life was a lesson for others, not a life for her to live. Maya asked how he got those words. Ethan's fingers hovered over the page, trembling. Laundry room, he said. Hallway. He paused. Outside, near your door. Maya felt a chill move up her spine. She had always known the building was thin, but she hadn't realized how much of her life could leak through it. Ethan added, "They speak like it is. Harmless." His jaw clenched. "But they repeat it, practice it, so it sounds true." Maya thought of the human brain, how repetition turns rumor into belief, how certainty can be manufactured like a product. She asked why they wanted him. Ethan's eyes flicked away, shame flashing across his face like a reflex. "Because I look objective," he said, and the sentence sounded like something someone else had put in his mouth before. He swallowed. "If I say it, they say it is not bullying, it is not gossip, it is fact." Maya felt her hands curl into fists. She wanted to tell him he didn't owe anyone anything, that his voice belonged to him. But she also knew they were trying to steal more than his voice. They were trying to steal his credibility, then discard him again. Maya asked if anyone had approached him yet. Ethan nodded once, slow. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, then held it up like a contaminated object. Maya saw the property company logo again. "Request for statement," it read, with boxes to check and a line for a signature. In the margin, someone had written in pen, "Just confirm concerns." Concerns, the polite word people use when they want to sound moral while doing harm. Maya felt nausea rise. She asked what Ethan told them. He didn't answer immediately. Ethan walked to the window and adjusted the curtain a fraction, peering out like he was checking the world's temperature. Then he returned to the table and said, "I said I need time." His voice tightened on the last word, like time was a luxury he didn't actually have. Maya realized he was managing more than fear. He was managing overload, the pressure, the noise, the social demands stacked against him. People assumed autistic silence meant consent. They didn't understand that sometimes silence is survival. Maya asked if he could refuse. Ethan's eyes narrowed. "They will not accept no," he said quietly. Maya sat down, feeling her knees weaken. She tried to imagine the hearing, a room with fluorescent lights, people speaking in smooth voices, questions designed to corner. She pictured Ethan there, sensory overwhelmed, struggling to translate inner truth into the exact words they demanded. She pictured them interpreting his pauses as dishonesty, his flat tone as lack of empathy. The thought made her chest ache. She asked carefully what he needed from her. Ethan stared at the notebook, then said something that surprised her. "I need you to believe me," he said, and his voice cracked slightly, like the sentence came from a place he rarely touched. Maya's eyes stung. She told him she did. She told him she believed him completely. And she meant it. In that moment, her fear shifted shape. It became purpose. She asked if he would let her take pictures of his notes. Ethan hesitated, protective of his privacy, then shook his head once. "Not pictures," he said. He opened a drawer and pulled out a second notebook, blank. He placed it on the table between them, like an offering. "We make a copy," he said. "Together, so it is clean." Maya understood. A shared record, a witness to the witness. They worked in silence at first, writing down the timeline, the flyers, the intake forms, the landlord's visit, the text message, the envelope. Maya's handwriting was messy from shaking, but Ethan's was steady, almost painfully neat. Every few lines he paused to breathe, and Maya learned to pause too, matching his rhythm. It felt strangely intimate, like building a bridge out of facts. Maya realized something about Ethan's quiet move. It wasn't avoidance. It was precision. He was choosing actions that couldn't be twisted as easily as emotions. Halfway through, Maya's phone buzzed again. Another email from work, this time marked urgent. Meeting required regarding conduct. Conduct. Maya's heart dropped. She hadn't done anything. She showed Ethan the screen, and he stared at it with a focused intensity that made Maya feel seen. "They are widening it," he said. Work, home, everything. Maya felt her breath shorten. This wasn't random pressure. It was coordinated. It was a strategy designed to make her crumble from multiple angles until she looked unstable on paper. Ethan stood, pacing in a small loop near his table, hands flexing, then clasping, then flexing again. Maya watched him fight his own rising panic with structure, and she felt a moral clarity sharpen inside her. She could not ask him to be brave in the way loud people demanded. She could only ask him to be brave in his way. She said softly that she would not let them use him. Ethan stopped pacing and looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something like decision forming, slow but solid. Then Ethan walked to his bookshelf and pulled out a folder Maya hadn't noticed before. He opened it and slid out a single printed page with a letterhead that looked more official than the property company's. He set it down in front of her, tapping the top line once. Maya leaned in and read it, and her stomach flipped. It was a complaint form addressed to a state housing oversight office, partially filled out with the landlord's name already typed. Ethan's voice was steady, almost whisper quiet. "I started," he said, "but I did not send. Not yet." He paused, eyes locked on the form. Because the timing has to be right. Maya stared at the oversight form as if it were a door that might finally open. It looked plain, almost boring, which made it powerful. No pleading language, no personal drama, just boxes, dates, names, the kind of truth that survives in offices where people pretend feelings don't exist. Still, her hands shook as she touched the paper's edge. She had lived long enough to know that even truth can lose, depending on who tells it and how they look while telling it. Ethan watched her fingers, not her eyes, as if he could handle the movement, but not the emotion. "Timing," he repeated, quieter, like the word was a safety rail. Maya understood what he meant without him explaining. If they filed too early, the landlord could claim retaliation. If they filed too late, the story about her could harden into fact. Her brain hated this waiting. The human mind craves closure, and uncertainty keeps it hungry, scanning for danger even in silence. She asked why he hadn't sent it. Ethan's jaw tightened, and for a second he looked like he regretted showing her. "Because when they pressure me," he said, "they will say I am unstable." The word landed with old weight. Maya heard the hidden sentence. They always say that. Ethan breathed in, slow, like he was counting. "I need them to show their pattern," he added. Not just one moment. Maya felt the moral sting. Waiting for harm to become provable meant enduring more harm. Maya thought of Leo's face and felt something fierce rise. She didn't want to become a person who waits while her child becomes collateral, but she also knew impulse could be weaponized against her. She pictured a hearing where her fear got labeled hysteria. She pictured people nodding as if they were being fair. Her shame tried to crawl up her throat, but she swallowed it down. "So what do we do?" she asked, voice steady by force, "while we wait for them to reveal themselves?" Ethan walked to his table and opened his notebook again. He tapped a page with a short list of dates and times. "We document," he said. "Only what happens. No adjectives, no guesses." Maya almost laughed at the simplicity, but the simplicity felt like relief. He wasn't asking her to win a social battle. He was asking her to survive long enough for reality to be undeniable. Ethan's calm wasn't comfort. It was strategy disguised as routine. Maya went back to her apartment and tried to move through the afternoon like a normal person. She folded laundry, answered Leo's questions, smiled at the right moments, but her nervous system stayed lit, as if a spotlight had been aimed at her from somewhere she couldn't see. Every sound in the hallway made her shoulders jump. When a neighbor laughed outside, Maya didn't hear joy. She heard permission. She hated that fear was rewriting her senses, turning ordinary life into a puzzle full of hidden threats. That evening, she took Leo downstairs to the small shared courtyard, hoping fresh air could reset them both. Children played near the fence, their voices rising and falling like birds. Maya sat on a bench and watched Leo run, his shoes scuffing the concrete. For a few minutes her chest loosened. Then she noticed two parents whispering, eyes flicking toward her, then away too fast. The whispering didn't sound angry. It sounded entertained, which somehow felt worse. Leo returned with a scraped knee, lip trembling more from embarrassment than pain. Maya cleaned it with a wipe, speaking softly, offering him dignity before comfort. As she applied the bandage, she caught her reflection in her phone screen. Tired eyes, hair pulled back too tight, a face trying to look unbreakable. She wondered how she looked to strangers. Did they see a mother fighting, or a mess waiting to happen? The thought made her stomach knot. She hated needing other people's perception to be safe. On the way back upstairs, they passed the bulletin board again. Someone had added another sheet under the intake form. Community Standards Reminder. It listed rules about noise, cleanliness, visitor frequency, and appropriate conduct. The language was neutral, but the timing was not. Maya felt singled out without her name ever appearing, like the building was pointing at her with invisible fingers. Leo asked why there were so many papers. Maya started to answer, then stopped, realizing she didn't know how to explain cruelty that wears a smile. Inside, Maya checked her mailbox and found a letter from the school. Request for parent meeting, it said, polite and urgent. Her hands went numb. There was no explanation, just a time slot and a signature. Maya pictured a principal's office, fluorescent lighting, someone saying, "We're concerned." Concern again, the soft word that opens hard doors. She looked at Leo, who was humming while he kicked off his shoes, and she felt the terror of knowing adults could reshape a child's life with a sentence. She crossed the hall to Ethan's door with the school letter in hand. She didn't knock this time. She waited, listening, until she heard his careful footsteps approach. When he opened, she held up the letter without speaking because her voice felt unreliable. Ethan read it quickly, then closed his eyes for a beat, like the information hit him physically. "They are spreading," he said, and Maya heard the truth beneath it. "They are testing how many places they can touch." Ethan stepped into the hallway, something he rarely did unless necessary. He kept his body angled away from the corridor, as if minimizing exposure. "Do not go alone," he said again. "To school, to hearing, anywhere." Maya asked if he meant he would come. Ethan hesitated, and she saw the internal conflict, the instinct to retreat versus the decision to protect. His lips parted, then closed, then opened again. "Yes," he said finally, and the single word felt heavier than a long speech. Maya felt a rush of gratitude that almost turned into tears, and she hated that tears felt dangerous. She asked why he would do this when it cost him so much. Ethan's gaze dropped to the floor, then lifted, brief and direct. "Because I know what it is," he said, voice thin but steady, "when people write your life for you." The sentence hit Maya like a hand on her shoulder. She realized Ethan wasn't just helping her. He was refusing a familiar script, the one where quiet people get used and discarded. The next morning they walked to the school together. Ethan kept a small distance, not cold, just regulated, his headphones resting around his neck like a shield he could raise if needed. Maya carried the school letter in her purse like a stone. Outside the office, she saw the receptionist glance at them, then at Ethan, then back at Maya with a look that tried to be neutral and failed. Maya's pulse spiked. Before she could speak, a woman in a blazer stepped out and said, "Ms. Carter, we need to discuss some reports." Her pause felt intentional, like she was savoring the power of not saying the worst part yet. Maya followed the woman in the blazer down a hallway that smelled like hand sanitizer and pencil shavings. The walls were covered in children's art, bright suns, messy rainbows, stick figure families smiling too hard. Maya's mind latched onto that contrast like a splinter. Innocence on the walls, suspicion in the air. Ethan walked beside her with careful steps, gaze lowered, shoulders tight. His presence felt like an anchor and a risk at the same time. Maya hated that she even had to think that way. They entered a small office with a round table and a box of tissues placed in plain sight, like the room expected tears. A counselor introduced herself with a voice too gentle, the kind that tries to sound safe while asking invasive questions. Another staff member sat quietly with a notebook, pen poised. Maya's stomach turned at the familiar shape of the setup. Warmth on the surface, documentation underneath. She kept her hands folded to hide their tremble. The counselor smiled and said, "We're just concerned about transitions at home." Maya asked what the concern was exactly. The counselor glanced down at her notes, then back up. "Leo has seemed anxious," she said, "and he mentioned things like noise in the building and adults arguing." Maya felt heat rush to her face. Adults arguing could mean anything, could be anyone, could be a hallway TV. But the sentence was vague on purpose. Vague sentences are easier to shape. Maya chose her words carefully. She said the building was loud sometimes, but Leo was safe. She said they had routines. She said she was attentive. Each sentence felt like placing a brick, hoping the wall would hold. The staff member with the notebook asked, "Has anyone been visiting your apartment frequently?" The question landed too smoothly, like it had been practiced. Maya's mind flashed to the visitor frequency sheet on the bulletin board. She felt a cold certainty. The building's story had reached the school. She answered no, not frequently, and then hated herself for adding, "Just my neighbor sometimes," because the moment she said it, she realized she had named Ethan without intending to. She glanced at him, panic rising, but Ethan didn't react outwardly. His face stayed controlled, as if he'd anticipated the trap. The counselor turned to Ethan with a bright, careful smile. "And you are?" she asked, as if she didn't already know. Maya watched Ethan's throat move as he swallowed. He spoke his name quietly. The counselor nodded and said, "Thank you for coming. It's wonderful to see community support." The phrase sounded kind, but Maya felt the edge beneath it. They were measuring him. The staff member's pen moved. Ethan's hands tightened at his sides, then relaxed, then tightened again. Maya tried to steer the conversation back to facts. She asked if there had been a report filed, and by whom. The counselor's expression didn't change, but her tone cooled slightly. "We can't share that," she said. Confidential again. Maya felt the same trap closing, the same polite wall. The staff member asked whether Maya had ever felt overwhelmed to the point of yelling. Maya heard how the question was built. If she said no, she sounded dishonest. If she said yes, she sounded unstable. She answered that she was human, but she never endangered her child. The staff member's pen scratched faster. Ethan shifted his weight and spoke, voice low but clear. "May I ask what you are documenting?" he said. The room paused. The counselor blinked, surprised that he had spoken at all. Maya's heart hammered. This was the incongruence that pulls attention, the quiet man interrupting the script. The counselor smiled again, tighter. "We're simply noting the conversation," she said. Ethan nodded slowly, then said, "Then please note that you have not stated a specific incident, only general statements." The words were plain, but they landed like a light turned on. Maya felt a strange rush of relief. Ethan wasn't arguing with emotion. He was forcing precision. The counselor cleared her throat and tried to regain control. She mentioned that Leo had said he sometimes hears knocking at night, and people talking about his mom. Maya's blood went cold. That wasn't school anxiety. That was their building leaking into Leo's mind. Maya's hands clenched under the table. She thought of the anonymous text, the envelope, the landlord's smile. Now the damage had reached her child's mouth. The counselor asked if Maya had support systems. Maya almost laughed. Support systems, as if love could be installed like software. She said she had a neighbor who cared, and she had a job, and she had herself. She didn't mention her reduced hours. She didn't mention the conduct email. She didn't mention how close she was to losing balance. She could feel her brain trying to protect her by shrinking her world to the present moment. Breathe, answer, survive. Ethan watched her carefully, and Maya sensed he was tracking the questions the way he tracked hallway patterns. The staff member asked Ethan directly if he had ever witnessed concerning behavior in Maya's home. Maya's chest tightened so hard she felt dizzy. This was it. The lever. They had brought him here to be the neutral witness, the responsible voice. Ethan's face went still again, the same controlled silence Maya had learned to read as effort, not emptiness. He didn't answer immediately. The counselor leaned forward slightly, smile steady. The pen hovered, waiting to catch his words like insects in a jar. Ethan spoke slowly. "I have witnessed a mother who is tired," he said, and the counselor's smile flickered. "I have witnessed a child who is loved," he continued, voice steadying as he went. "I have not witnessed abuse. I have witnessed neighbors discussing her private life in the hallway." The room froze. Maya's eyes stung. The counselor tried to interrupt, but Ethan kept going, still quiet, still measured. "I have notes," he added, "with dates, if needed." His calm didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like reality refusing to bend. The counselor's tone sharpened, barely. She asked what he meant by notes, and Ethan's gaze flicked to Maya for a fraction of a second, seeking consent without words. Maya nodded once, small. Ethan said he documented repeated discussions by specific residents, including building management, about creating a record of concerns. The staff member's pen stopped moving. The counselor's face tightened, then smoothed again. She said the school was not here to get involved in housing issues. But Maya could hear the shift. The room no longer felt like it belonged to them. It felt watched. The counselor ended the meeting faster than it began, promising follow-up and resources. Maya walked out feeling hollow and hot at the same time. In the hallway, she gripped Ethan's sleeve lightly, then released it, unsure what contact did to his nervous system. He didn't flinch. He only said very quietly, "They did not expect me to speak." Maya's stomach churned with both hope and fear. Because if they didn't expect him to speak here, they would adjust their plans somewhere else. Back at the building, Maya saw the landlord talking to someone near the office, someone in a suit she didn't recognize, holding a slim laptop bag. The landlord laughed, then stopped laughing the instant he noticed Maya and Ethan together. His eyes narrowed, then softened into a smile that didn't reach his face. The suited person turned slightly, following the landlord's gaze, and Maya felt exposed, like a file had just been opened with her name on it. Ethan's steps slowed, and his fingers flexed once. Maya realized the next pressure wouldn't come as a question. That night, Maya opened her email and found a calendar invite she hadn't accepted. Subject line, "Lease review hearing, attendance required." Attached was a document labeled Witness List. Her breath caught when she saw it. Under her name was a line that shouldn't have been there yet, typed as if it were already decided. Primary witness, Ethan R. statement pending. And beside it, a second line that made her skin go cold. Optional attendee, local community journalist. Maya stared at the word journalist until it stopped looking like a real word. It felt like a spotlight turning on before she had agreed to be seen. She imagined a stranger asking questions with a sympathetic face, then editing her answers into a shape that fit their narrative. People loved clean stories. Troubled tenant, concerned community, responsible management. The truth, messy and human, rarely made it to the final cut. Her heart raced, as if her body could outrun the idea. But her body was trapped in a chair, in a kitchen, in a life someone else was trying to summarize. She showed the email to Ethan in the hallway the next morning. He read it fast, and Maya saw his breathing change. Shorter, sharper, before he forced it back into rhythm. "They want a performance," he said. Maya nodded. The hearing wasn't just for a decision. It was for an audience. Ethan's gaze stayed on the word journalist as if it were a bright light he couldn't look at directly. "If they get a headline," he added, "the headline becomes truth." Maya felt her stomach drop. A headline could reach her job, her son's school, her whole fragile support system. Maya asked what they should do. Ethan didn't answer with comfort. He answered with a question. "Do you have any proof they contacted media?" he asked. Maya shook her head. Ethan nodded, like he expected that. "Then they will deny it," he said, "unless they show it." Maya understood his logic. They needed the plan to reveal itself without them seeming paranoid. The hardest part of being targeted quietly is that your fear looks irrational until it's too late. Ethan's mind seemed built for this kind of invisible fight, pattern against performance. That afternoon, Maya received a call from her manager asking her to come in to clear up concerns. The manager sounded polite, but the words felt rehearsed. Maya felt her mouth go dry. She asked what concerns, and the manager said, "We've gotten some feedback," then paused in a way that suggested the feedback was damning. Maya imagined the landlord's network extending like roots into places it shouldn't reach. She agreed to come, then hung up and sat in silence. She could feel stress narrowing her thinking, shrinking her options. That's what chronic pressure does. It makes you smaller. Ethan met her in the hallway before she left. He didn't ask if she was okay. He simply said, "Bring paper," and held up his notebook. Maya blinked. Ethan added, "Write down what they say, after, not during, if it feels unsafe." The instruction was simple, almost gentle. It gave her something to do besides panic. She nodded, slipping a small notepad into her bag. As she walked to the bus stop, she felt the strange comfort of a plan, even a small one. Plans calm the brain because they create an illusion of control. At the store where Maya worked, the fluorescent lights made her eyes ache. Her manager led her into a back room with stacked boxes and a folding chair, a room meant for inventory, not accusations. Another supervisor sat beside a clipboard, and Maya felt a flash of déjà vu, round table energy without the round table. The manager said they were not blaming her, then asked if she had personal instability that could affect her performance. Maya's chest tightened. Instability again. A word that could mean anything. Maya answered carefully. Her life was stressful, but she did her job well. The supervisor asked if Maya had been involved in conflicts at home that might carry over. Maya heard the shape of the rumor. Dramatic tenant, emotional outbursts, unsafe environment. Her hands clenched in her lap. She wanted to ask who said it, but she already knew the answer would be confidential. She forced herself to speak in short sentences, factual and calm. She mentioned Leo's school schedule, her consistent attendance, her approved shift swap. The manager nodded as if listening, but Maya could feel they were watching her tone more than her words, hunting for cracks. When Maya left, she wrote everything down in her car with shaking hands. The act felt desperate, but it also felt like resistance. She returned to the building and met Ethan by the mailboxes. She handed him the notes, and he read them without expression, but his eyes moved faster as he reached certain phrases. Personal instability. Conflicts at home. Feedback. He tapped the paper once. "Same language," he said. Maya's throat tightened. The rumor had traveled with the same vocabulary, like a copied script. Ethan looked up and said, "They are using templates." The day before the hearing, a glossy pamphlet appeared under several doors in the building. Community values and resident well-being. Maya found one on her floor, then another near the stairs, as if the building itself was pushing the message. The pamphlet talked about maintaining standards and protecting children. Words that sounded moral until you realized who they pointed at. Maya saw neighbors reading it, nodding, feeling righteous. Righteousness is a drug. It makes people feel good while doing harm. She felt sick watching it work. She wondered how many of them truly believed it. That night, Ethan knocked on Maya's door, which startled her because he almost never initiated contact. When she opened, he stood there with a small envelope in his hand. His eyes were fixed slightly to the side, as if direct gaze would overload him. "For you," he said. Maya took it and opened it. Inside was a single sheet, a typed timeline with dates and times, clean and structured, with quotes he'd heard written exactly. At the bottom, he had listed 3 names. 2 were neighbors. The third was the landlord's regional supervisor. Maya's breath caught. This wasn't small gossip. It went upward. Maya asked how he got the supervisor's name. Ethan swallowed, then said, "I heard him on the phone." Maya waited. Ethan added, he said, "We need a narrative that holds." The phrase punched the air out of her lungs. Narrative, holds, like a product being tested. Maya felt rage rise, but she contained it, turning it into focus. She asked Ethan if he would speak at the hearing. Ethan's hands trembled, then steadied as he pressed them against his thighs. "Yes," he said, "but not how they want." On the morning of the hearing, the building's lobby felt different. Too many clean shoes, too many polite faces. Maya saw a woman near the entrance holding a small microphone bag, smiling at the landlord like they were friends. The journalist. Maya's stomach dropped. The landlord approached Maya with his warmest voice, asking if she felt ready to clear things up. Behind him, the journalist angled her body slightly toward Maya, like a camera without a lens. Maya's heart hammered. Ethan stood beside her, shoulders tight, breathing controlled, and Maya realized something. The most dangerous moment wasn't the hearing. It was the seconds before, when people decide what you are. They were ushered into a conference room with a long table. The landlord sat at one end with the regional supervisor, both calm, both polished. The journalist sat off to the side, notebook open, eyes bright with interest. Maya felt her skin crawl. A mediator introduced the process with neutral words that sounded fair, then asked the landlord to summarize concerns. The landlord spoke smoothly about resident disruptions, community complaints, and child welfare. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every sentence sounded reasonable, which is how unjust systems survive. Then the mediator turned to Ethan and said, "Sir, as a witness, can you confirm what you've observed?" And Ethan did something Maya didn't expect at all. Ethan didn't answer the question. He reached into his bag, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and slid it across the table toward the mediator. His voice stayed quiet. "Before I speak," he said, "please read this." The mediator frowned and glanced down. The landlord's smile tightened. The journalist leaned forward. Maya watched the mediator's eyes move across the page, and she saw a flicker of confusion turn into something sharper. Because at the top of Ethan's page was a subject line that didn't match the hearing at all. Formal complaint draft, retaliation and coordinated defamation. The room changed in a way Maya could feel in her skin. The landlord's calm didn't crack loudly. It tightened, like a rope pulled too hard. The mediator reread the heading, then looked up, eyes narrowing with the kind of attention that can't be bought. The journalist's pen paused in midair, then started moving faster. Maya's heart pounded so hard it made her ears ring, but beneath the fear, something else surfaced: relief. Ethan hadn't walked into their script. He had brought his own. Ethan kept his hands flat on the table, grounding himself. He didn't look at the landlord. He didn't look at the journalist. He aimed his words at the mediator, like he was choosing the only person in the room who could change the outcome. "I was asked to confirm concerns," he said, voice quiet, controlled. "I cannot confirm concerns that were created on purpose." The phrase landed with a strange softness that made it harder to dismiss. Maya watched the regional supervisor's eyes flicker toward the landlord. quick and sharp. That tiny glance told her everything. They hadn't expected this. The mediator asked Ethan what he meant by created. Ethan nodded once, as if the question gave him a safe path. He slid a second paper forward, his timeline, clean and typed. Dates, times, direct quotes. No melodrama. Maya saw the mediator's gaze move down the page, stopping at repeated phrases. Maintain standards, make a record, responsible witness, narrative that holds. The mediator's mouth tightened. The journalist leaned forward again, interest turning from curiosity into hunger. Maya's stomach twisted, but she reminded herself, hunger can work both ways. Let them be hungry for the truth. The landlord tried to interrupt with a smooth laugh, calling it misunderstanding and overinterpretation. Ethan didn't argue with the tone. He argued with the structure. These words were repeated, he said, by the same people, in the same order, on different days. He paused, breathing, then added, that is not random. Maya felt a shiver. This was Ethan's quiet move, turning their invisible pattern into something visible. The human brain trusts patterns more than pleas. Ethan was giving the room something it could not unsee. The mediator asked if Ethan had recordings. The landlord's eyes sharpened, but his smile stayed. Ethan hesitated, and Maya felt the risk. Recording laws. Privacy. The danger of being painted as the unstable neighbor obsessing over others. Ethan spoke carefully. I have notes, he said, and I have one voicemail that was played near my door, loud enough to hear. The landlord's smile twitched. The regional supervisor looked down at his own papers too quickly, as if searching for a way out. Maya realized then, Ethan wasn't relying on one big bomb. He was stacking small, undeniable truths. Maya spoke for the first time, voice steadier than she expected. She described the landlord's visit, the chain latch, the folder, the phrase lease review hearing, the hint about someone responsible vouching. She didn't plead. She didn't cry. She stuck to facts the way Ethan had taught her, and she could feel her nervous system resisting the urge to over-explain. The mediator asked if she had the text message. Maya pulled out her phone and showed the deleted message in her recovery folder, the timestamp clear. For the first time, the landlord looked truly irritated. The journalist cleared her throat and asked Maya a question, framed like kindness. How does it feel to be under scrutiny? Maya felt the bait. A feeling-based quote would make a better story than a timeline. Maya answered with a sentence that surprised even her. It feels like people confuse paperwork with truth, she said. The journalist blinked, pen hovering. The mediator's eyes flicked up, measuring Maya differently now. Maya sensed the power shift. They were no longer discussing her as a problem. They were discussing whether the process itself had been corrupted. Ethan's breathing changed again, faster for a moment, then steadied. He touched his notebook with 2 fingers, a small ritual. I was also asked to sign a statement, he said, with suggestions written in the margin. He slid the statement request across the table. The mediator read the handwritten note. Just confirm concerns. The mediator's face tightened. The regional supervisor leaned forward, suddenly eager to appear reasonable, suggesting they pause and review procedures. Maya heard the desperation under the politeness. This was damage control. The landlord's story was collapsing, not with a shout, but with a paper trail. The mediator asked the landlord directly if building management had coordinated resident complaints. The landlord began speaking faster, using words like community-driven and resident-led. But the mediator didn't look convinced anymore. Maya watched the landlord's hands, how they clasped and unclasped, and she felt a strange satisfaction. Not revenge, recognition. The truth wasn't winning because it was dramatic. It was winning because it was boringly consistent. Ethan had understood something Maya hadn't. Systems speak in repeated language, and repeated language leaves fingerprints. The mediator called for a brief recess. People stood, chairs scraping, voices lowering into side conversations. Maya remained seated, hands in her lap, trying not to shake. Ethan sat too, eyes fixed on the table edge, regulating himself like a person holding a door shut against a storm. Maya wanted to thank him, but gratitude felt too big for the moment. Instead, she whispered, "Are you okay?" Ethan nodded once, then said, "I will be after it is finished." The sentence sounded like someone who had learned to postpone collapse until it was safe. In the corner, the journalist approached the regional supervisor, voice low. Maya watched them speak, saw the supervisor's expression change from confident to cautious. The journalist then glanced toward Maya and Ethan, no longer smiling the same way. Maya realized the story was shifting in the journalist's mind too. It was no longer troubled tenant. It was quiet retaliation. It was paperwork as a weapon. Maya hated the idea of being news, but she also understood something hard. Visibility can protect you when secrecy is the tool used against you. The mediator returned and announced the immediate decision. The lease review would be suspended pending an independent investigation into management conduct. Maya's breath caught, suspended, not over, but stopped. A door held open. The mediator also advised Maya to contact a legal aid office and offered a written record of today's testimony. Maya's eyes stung, but she blinked it back. She felt the urge to collapse into relief, but she held herself upright because Leo would need her to stay upright a little longer. Ethan's shoulders dropped a fraction, the smallest sign of release. Outside the room, the landlord avoided Maya's eyes for the first time. The regional supervisor spoke in a tight, controlled voice about internal review and miscommunication. The journalist asked Ethan for a comment, and Maya tensed, afraid the attention would overwhelm him. Ethan paused, then said a sentence so simple it cut through everything. "I wrote things down because people said I imagined them," he said. "I did not." The journalist's expression softened, real this time, and Maya felt something inside her unclench. That sentence didn't just defend Maya. It defended Ethan's whole life. Back in the apartment, Leo ran into Maya's arms as if he'd been holding his breath all day. Maya held him and let herself feel the warmth, the truth no form could capture. She looked over Leo's head at Ethan standing in the doorway, uncertain where to put himself now that the crisis had shifted. Maya stepped toward him and said quietly, "You didn't just help us. You stopped them from writing our ending." Ethan's eyes flickered, overwhelmed but present. He nodded once, and for the first time his mouth lifted into something close to a smile. Later, when the building settled into evening, Maya taped Leo's newest drawing to her fridge. It showed a sun, a house, and 3 people holding hands, but this time the lines were thicker, more confident. Maya realized that safety isn't only a place, it's a pattern too. A pattern of someone showing up, someone telling the truth, someone refusing to make you small. The landlord's plan hadn't shattered because of force. It had shattered because a quiet man chose clarity over compliance, and Maya knew she would carry that lesson long after the papers stopped moving. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever felt judged by paperwork, whispered about by people who don't know your life, or forced to prove your worth just to keep a roof over your head, don't let Maya and Ethan's fight end in silence. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter of stories like this. Leave a like if you believe quiet courage deserves to be seen, and put it here below in the comments. Have you ever been targeted when you were already struggling, and what would you have done in their place?